Hey there, Duke fans. Welcome to episode 156 of DBR Bites, the Duke Basketball Roundup. Jason Evans here for you. We've got a little bit of news, so we thought we'd come on and just chat a bit. Donald Wine is very, very busy today, so I am instead joined by my good friend Scott Rich. Scott, how you doing today? It, by the way, is the day after the national championship game. It's about 4:15 on Tuesday. And we will make time on this podcast for you to talk about your Michigan Wolverines taking out the UConn Huskies. Are you excited about talking about that?
I'm very excited. The wife and I just spent an inordinate amount of time finding the cutest little outfit for baby Quinn that says Michigan National Championships. Would have rather it said Duke National Champions, but as far as consolation prizes go, I will take it.
There you go, my good friend. There you go. The main reason we're here today, and this is not going to be a long one. I mean, look, those of you already have this in your feed. Scott and I are guessing, but those of you who already have it in your feed can see exactly how long it is. Not a long one. It's a DBR Bites, a true Bites, because we want to bid farewell. A member of the Brotherhood, Darren Harris, has officially, I don't know if it's officially entered the portal or it's been announced that he's entering the portal, something, in that kind of ballpark. This, Scott, is not something that was unexpected. A lot of us who sort of look and try and guess at the roster construction kind of stuff have speculated that Darren Harris probably was going to decide to take the final 2 years of his career elsewhere other than Duke. So I'll let you go first. Give me some reflections, some thoughts on Darren Harris. And by the way, zero, at least on my part, zero ill feelings about this at all. Love the kid. But go ahead and wax for me for a couple of moments on Darren Harris entering the portal and looking for someplace else to play his basketball.
I'm with you 100%. I think that Darren got every opportunity to succeed at Duke, and unfortunately it didn't work out. We were waiting all year for that coming out party moment where he would cement himself as the eighth or even ninth, solid ninth guy in the rotation. It just didn't happen. It wasn't for lack of effort. One thing about Darren Harris, despite the fact that he was not a noted defensive stalwart, he played his butt off at both ends of the floor every minute he was on the court in a Duke uniform. And not everyone who has the reputation of being a shooter does that. So I love Darren Harris for that. And that's one reason why I'm super confident he will be successful wherever he ends up. I think as Duke fans, I think this is a little bit of a sobering realization of it's really hard to be a shooter and play 5-10 minutes a game. Darren Harris was put in a really challenging position of having to carve out a role on a team when it's hard to do what he does best when you're coming in cold for spot minutes, playing 2-3 minutes a half. It's really hard to do. It's why Jaden Schutt ended up elsewhere and succeeding. It's why TJ Power had to go a couple places, but now obviously had a very, very successful year at Penn. That archetype is something that I think we've seen now with three different guys under John Scheyer. It's hard to break through. Who knows if that's going to be something that John adjusts to, but it's hard to make an impact when you are a shooter playing 5 to 10 minutes a game. You can't get into that rhythm. You can't make that impact. I have no doubt that Darren Harris is going to go somewhere else and succeed, but the path just wasn't there for him to do at Duke. And I have to imagine that this was something, like you said, that both Darren and the program sort of knew was coming, and it seems by all accounts that this was, an amicable breakup.
Yeah. I don't think I don't think Duke was particularly shocked, nor do I think, when Darren and John sat down and talked about his season, that John said, dude, we really, really, really need you back next year. I think there's a realization about what Darren could be and what he could be elsewhere versus what he could be at Duke. I want to go on the record and say I could not have been more wrong about this guy, about his career. I saw him play in the Chipotle Nationals in the high school national championship 2 years ago, right about this time. He was PVI's best player, leading that team to the high school national championship game where they were very competitive with a Cooper Flagg-led Montverde squad that may have been the greatest high school basketball team we have ever seen.
But how many first round picks? All the entire starting lineup,
No,
first
no,
round
four
picks?
four of them, I believe,
And
and
Robert
then the
Wright.
fifth was Robert Wright, who went on to get first round money playing for BYU this past year. Uh, uh, to call that team stacked is like the understatement of all time. I think there were two or three lottery picks, like three lottery, whatever it was. It's outrageous how great that team was, that Montverde team was. And really, they were going up against a PVI squad that had Darren Harris as the primary creator of their offense, their primary shooter. The whole focus when you played PVI was how do you shut down Darren Harris? And he was pretty damn successful against that Montverde team. I was certain that this guy was going to come to Duke and become a real focal point of Duke's offense. I was like, oh, he may struggle on defense, that may be a challenge for him, but offensively, this guy's going to knock down shots. He could create off the dribble when he was at PVI, and then he got to college, and all of it went away. Let's be very clear. Darren Harris hit 33% of his threes this year. That's not, designated shooter, guy to come off the bench and hit the open three for you. 33% does not get it done. And he was not shooting three-pointers the way like Isaiah Evans does, where he's on the move, where guys are really close. When he took threes, he was open. He only hit 33%. In fact, in ACC play, he was under 30%. In fact, if you take out, he had a meaningless game against, we beat the pants off of Army. Duke crushed Army. It was not a game where it was anywhere close to competitive. He hit 5 out of 7 3-pointers in that game against Army. You take out that game where he's playing against a team that is one of the bottom, 30, 40, 50 teams in all of Division I. He was only 29% on the season. And by the way, he was even worse than that as a freshman. For a guy who's a designated shooter. And I know it is so, you said it, it's so hard. Hey, Darren, you're going to get 3 minutes. Go in and hit a 3-pointer. My goodness, how impossible is that to do? But on the other hand, he consistently didn't do it. And I wish the kid every bit of luck in the world. I hope he goes out and proves us completely wrong. Nothing would make me happier than if Darren Harris transfers someplace and it's just lighting it up next season. And Duke fans are like, oh God, why don't we have this? I'd be sad that Duke doesn't have him, but I'd be thrilled for Darren Harris. But I just feel like he's going to have to go to either a lower level power conference team or a mid-level, upper level, mid-major to really be impactful. I want, by the way, Scott, I wonder a little bit if maybe the fact that it was so tough for him to get on the floor maybe freaked him out a little at Duke. Maybe, like there was a panic in him every time he was, not, and I don't say this to criticize Darren, but it's just the nature of how hard it is to get time at Duke. That like maybe Darren knew, oh shoot, I'm not going to get a chance if I don't hit this shot. And then that shot becomes so much harder to hit.
That's exactly what I sort of saw, is that when the games that Darren played well, he made his first shot. The games that, unfortunately, the majority of them where Darren came out, took his first open shot, missed, and you just sort of saw the air come out of him, and you saw, oh crap, I'm only gonna get a minute or two. Right now, again, you give Darren Harris credit. He stuck a lot of hustle plays. He stuck a lot of diving on the floor in those few minutes that he played.
My lasting image of Darren is, and I should remember exactly who it was. There was a game late this year where was it the Notre Dame game? We were crushing someone,
yes.
And Darren was still just like busting his butt. In fact, I think I made him.
He got the steal and the foul to get us to 100 in that game when there were 30 seconds to go and the game was over, and it was just a lazy pass. And he's like, "No, screw it. I'm getting this, and I'm going to get my bucket."
Yeah, but he did that in competitive games. Like when Caleb got hurt and he was having to play. There were games you could always count on Darren to give you 100% every moment he was out there, and that's significant and that's praiseworthy. I can't wait to see him do that for someone else.
Again, Darren Harris is the type of guy that, hey, if he goes to like a St. Louis type school, a VCU type school, we're going to see in a year or two, oh, this team that everyone's the darling Cinderella, Darren Harris is shooting 40% from three. That's
Yep.
that's well within his future, and I think all Duke fans would be ecstatic if that's what ends up happening for the young man.
Exactly. Exactly. All right. With that, we're going to take, like I said, this is a bites. We're going to be kind of quick. We're going to take a quick break here. On the other side, we'll let Scott talk a little bit about Michigan winning the national title. And I'm not sure if you noticed, folks, there's a new coach in Chapel Hill. Some brief comments on Malone coming to Carolina in just a moment.
It's tax season, and at LifeLock, we know you're tired of numbers. But here's a big one you need to hear. Billions. That's the amount of money in refunds the IRS has flagged for possible identity fraud. Now here's another big number. 100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, we'll fix it guaranteed. One last big number. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit lifelock.com/podcast for the threats you can't control. Terms apply.
All right, Duke fans, do you have hunger pains? Are you snacking all the time? For me, eating healthy, it isn't a willpower problem, it's a setup problem. Until I found Factor. With Factor, I'm hitting my nutrition goals this season without the planning or the grocery runs.
Yeah, Jason, Factor has meals built around your goals, whether that's weight loss, original nutrition, more protein, or GLP-1 support. For strength and workout recovery, check out Factor's Muscle Pro collection. And every meal is crafted with functional ingredients, lean proteins, colorful veggies, whole foods, and healthy fats. No artificial colors or sweeteners, no high fructose corn syrup, no refined seed oils, just nutrient-dense food.
Head to factormeals.com/DukeBB50off. Again, use that code DukeBB50off to get 50% off and free daily greens per box with a new subscription only while supplies last until September 27th of this year. See the Factor website for more details. All right, back from the break, Jason and Scott Rich here on the DBR podcast. Scott, I'm going to go first, and I'll start with this. The Michigan Wolverines, hail to the victors. Michigan has won a national title, first title for the Big Ten since I think before you were born or something like that. Yeah, and congratulations, by the way, to former North Carolina Tar Heel, former ACC player Elliot Cadeau, wins the most outstanding player. One of the really amusing videos from yesterday from the national title game was when Elliot Cadeau wins most outstanding, they go MOP, and he's like, "What's that?" I kind of love that. So, give me some real quick thoughts on Elliot Cadeau, on Michigan, on your second team taking the national title.
Well, on the Elliot Cadeau of it all, there was another social media moment that I thought you were going to, which was in the post-game locker room. He's on Instagram Live and he's talking about how they thought I couldn't do this. They thought I was bleep. And in the background, you hear one of his Michigan teammates go, FUNC. Elliot Cadeau didn't say that, but his Michigan teammates backed him up and knew what he was talking about, knew what he overcame, and a program down the road that sort of threw him aside. Elliot Cadeau is a fascinating cautionary tale of the transfer portal era. It's not a cautionary tale, it's a joyous tale for me as a Michigan fan. Elliot Cadeau, Michigan does not win this national title without Elliot Cadeau. But how many UNC fans do you think are watching what happened with Elliot Cadeau and thinking, man, if that point guard, if that version of Elliot Cadeau was on this year's team, obviously Caleb Wilson has to stay healthy, but oh boy, if Elliot Cadeau is the one who's getting Caleb Wilson and Henry Visar the ball, it's a very different season. You got to hand it to the kid now that he's not in the wrong color blue. He's in my second favorite shade of blue. He's overcome a lot in his life. He's overcome a lot in his college career. For him to get that most outstanding player that was very well deserved was a great moment. From the game perspective, I thought it was fascinating that UConn basically had this game exactly how they wanted it to. They slowed the game down.
Yep.
They mucked it up. The first half went about as perfectly as Dan Hurley could have chalked it up, minus the foul trouble, and Michigan was still up 4 at half. That's how good this Michigan team was, is that they played UConn's game and still led comfortably throughout the entire second half. This was I saw someone on social media say this was the first ever 6-point blowout in a national championship game. Because yes, it was a 6-point game, but it never really felt that close. You also have to give Dusty May, the second-year head coach, yet another person who turned down supposedly the UNC job, a lot of credit for his very unorthodox roster building. I was among the Michigan fans who thought it was ridiculous at the beginning of the season when he started 6'9" Yaxel Endenborg, 6'9" former center Morez Johnson, and 7'3" Ademara in the same starting lineup. And boy, was everyone except for Dusty May wrong on that front. He created a team that was defensively imposing. If Ademara is not a first-round pick, not a borderline lottery pick, after what he did in the NCAA tournament, I'd be shocked. You can't teach his size, his athletic. He's a more athletic. At this point, he's a more athletic Zach Edey, and yet Zach Edey is a lottery pick. But for all of that, Dusty May created a roster, yes, through the transfer portal, but in a somewhat unorthodox manner of he got a really small pass-first point guard and a bunch of bigs, which is not the way that college basketball has been trending, and he made that work. It's a very interesting data point on what does college basketball and the transfer portal look like? What do you need to win a national title? It shows that there isn't one blueprint, especially as the transfer portal season heats up, especially as Duke fans start making their wish lists for, how they would create this roster if it was Madden and, they could just get whoever they wanted by giving infinite NIL dollars and not the real world. There is no one path to winning a national title. You don't need a bunch of 4-year guys to win a national title. You don't need a bunch of NBA one and dones to win a national title. You can win it in multiple different ways in the new era of college basketball. Dusty May just won it very differently than Todd Golden did last year, very differently than Danny Hurley did the 2 years prior. It's something to keep in mind as Duke's roster undergoes its trimming and its manipulation over these next few weeks.
You mentioned the transfer portal. Let's just really quickly, so folks are aware, so the names don't come as a surprise. There's a player that Duke has been linked to in the we talked about Flurry Bidunga, and the word is that sort of Duke and a couple other schools, including significantly Texas Tech. In fact, there are people out there who say Flurry Bidunga may be more likely to go to Texas Tech than any place else. But the guy I wanted to mention very, very quickly, Duke has been connected to former All Big Ten Wisconsin player John Blackwell. John Blackwell's a 6'4" wing who averaged more than 19 points per game, better than 5 rebounds per game, and significantly was a heck of a shooter. Throughout his entire career, he's been better than 80% from the free throw line. But just last year, he was close to 39% from three. A high volume 3-point shooter who hits a lot of 3-point shots and who also can put the ball on the floor, take it to the basket. It would be, in all likelihood, if for some reason Duke were to get John Blackwell, I think you would expect him to be the leading scorer on next year's team. And the reports are that Duke and Michigan and perhaps Indiana are the teams that are sort of the leaders for John Blackwell. Blackwell is also supposedly exploring the NBA draft. And that's, by the way, a big complication, I think, for Duke. It is really tough. We got lucky last year when Cedric Coward decided to stay in the draft and Duke was able to pivot to Dame Sarr. I want to be clear. I don't think that Dame Sarr had the impact on the Duke. As good as Dame Sarr was, he didn't have the impact that Cedric Coward would have had he come to Duke. But it is just really tough to wait until mid-May when these guys if these guys are really staying in the draft, wait till then for them to make up their mind. It's a very risky prospect if you're a team like Duke, because if for some reason John Blackwell decides to stay in the draft, I don't think he will. It doesn't feel like he has first round stock. Certainly, it doesn't feel like he has the kind of lottery pick stock that Cedric Coward ended up having, but you never know. But if one of these guys pivots, stays in the draft on you, then suddenly you're really stuck from a roster standpoint, and it's hard to find a last minute replacement like that. So, give me some thoughts on John Blackwell and the potential connection there to Duke.
Well, so, John Blackwell played big in big games, especially down the stretch. So I just want to rip off to you his numbers last 5 games of the year. One of the biggest wins of the year at Purdue, at an Elite Eight team. He scores 25 points in 38 minutes on 5 of 10 from 3. Next game, first round of the Big Ten tournament against an actually decent Washington team. A close game, they win. He scores 34 points again on 6 of 12 shooting from 3. In beating Illinois, now we know a Final Four team, he goes for 31 points in 44 minutes, shooting a not as good 4 of 12 from 3. Had a bit of an off night, only put down 13 in a loss to Michigan in the Big Ten semis. And then, albeit in a loss in the NCAA tournament, he puts up 22 on 3 for 5 shooting from 3 against High Point.
By the way, 10 rebounds in that game for him. Like in a couple of these games you're mentioning, he had a double-double with rebounds.
Yeah, this is a guy who, again, I haven't seen him, anywhere on NBA draft board, so I have to imagine this is hey, go get some, get your feedback, maybe go do a couple workouts. It would be really surprising if he stays in because he seems like a second round two-way guy, not a first round guy at this point, but it only takes one team. You never know. He's going to be the option one wherever he ends up. And it's interesting amongst the list of teams that you just talked about. And I've seen Illinois as well as a team that's been talked about with him. All of those teams right now seem to have guards. Michigan could return both Elliot Cadeau and Trey McKinney. Duke, we know, has a couple of really darn good guards penciled into the roster right now, Caden Boozer and Caleb Foster. You've talked about how it may not be possible for the roster to hold both of them. Maybe John Blackwell is a response to that. Illinois has some guards.
Really quick. I would argue that I don't know how to say this delicately. It is possible that what John Scheyer has decided, and I'm not saying this from the standpoint of knowing anything, just in terms of reading tea leaves and stuff like that. It's possible that John Scheyer has decided that he needs an upgrade in terms of Duke scoring on the wing, especially if Dame Sarr is coming back to Duke. If Dame Sarr comes back to Duke, unless you get a huge leap out of Dame from an offensive standpoint, your other wing spot needs to be a scorer. It needs to be someone who can do what Isaiah Evans did, maybe even more than what Isaiah Evans did, because there's Cameron Boozer's not walking through that door in the post. Cameron Boozer, So if you need a big scorer on the wing, I'm not sure that Caleb Foster or Caden Boozer or anyone currently on the roster provides that. So that's why a John Blackwell or someone like that makes a lot of sense for this Duke club, and yeah, that probably really limits your minutes, at the 2 guard kind of spot for someone like a CFOS.
And I think it's worth the dose of reality for Duke fans out there. There is a certain amount of Duke fans out there that are, I'm sure, saying, "Hey, give him the infinite money that we have somehow, and have him come in and split time with Caden and CFOS." That's not the way this works. And it would be nice if Duke just magically got every player that they wanted and it was a rigged version of NBA 2K. But that's not the way this works. If Duke is getting John Blackwell, there is a counter move, and it may not be one that we want to see. But if it happens, that John Scheyer has said this is what needs to happen to win a national title. And
look, there you say there may be multiple counter moves. I mean, a guy like John Blackwell is going to play 30 plus minutes per game for you. There could be a counter move that involves multiple guys on Duke who are like, I really want some of those wing minutes, and they suddenly may be really, really hard to come by.
Yeah,
I'm not going to name names, but anyway,
it's hard, and it's Duke fans. You have to recognize the reality of you can't have it both ways. You can't have the I want my freshmen to stay 4 years and develop, but I want to be a Final Four team every damn year.
Right.
Sometimes decisions have consequences. John Scheyer is doing whatever he can to make this team win. If in his assessment, getting a guy who's a senior in John Blackwell who's established is more important than the upside or, the risk of losing someone, you have to think that John Scheyer has played out every freaking possible scenario in his mind before he makes such a decision. We don't know if he's made such a decision yet. It's a transfer portal time. We're all
Correct.
guessing and speculating, but that's how we make content during these strange off-season times. But just every Duke fan needs to remember that there are pros and cons to every move. Every transfer portal decision has consequences, and not all of them are consequences that are going to be are going to be easy to stomach, but they are what's going to be necessary to make the best Duke team this fall. That's what John Scheyer's job is.
I mean, look, I don't want to say that these are all absolute cause and effects, but as a Duke fan, did you want a fifth-year Jeremy Roach or did you want Sion James? Did you want Cooper Flagg or did you want Mark Mitchell? Did you want Malik Brown or did you want Sean Stewart? I think that in all those cases, there were decisions that were made about what was the best roster that Duke could put together. And I think we may be in for another offseason where those kind of decisions have to be made.
And lest anyone gets the wrong impression, this is something that is happening at every major program in college basketball. In the team that just won the national championship, Elliot Cadeau committed to Michigan, but while Trey Donaldson was still on the roster, a guy who just led Michigan to a Sweet 16. But Trey Donaldson was a good, not great player. He had flaws. He was a scorer, not a facilitator.
He had a really nice season from Miami this year.
He did.
Yeah.
Dusty May knew he needed a facilitating point guard, not a score first point guard. He brought in Elliot Cadeau. Trey Donaldson entered the portal a couple of days later, and there was about 24 hours where Michigan fans were saying, "Oh, how is this 2-point guard system going to work?" No. That's not the way the world actually works.
Yeah.
So again, if this happens, just remember that this is what's going on at every single program that is competing for a national title in this new era of college basketball.
Well, and I would argue, and I'm not saying this is true, on an individual, singular person basis, but we're not really in a loyalty era of college basketball. They're just loyalty is a one season long kind of thing for the most part. Yes, you have an advantage. You have a more of a connection. John Scheyer's talked about it. Develop your own guys. Yes, absolutely. The guys who are in your program are more likely to be in your program, but everyone is a free agent every April. Everyone is a free agent, and sometimes that means making hard decisions. Hey, Scott, really fast. Let's get to the news down the street. North Carolina has picked their head coach. I think if you'd given me a list of 10 possible names and this guy's name was on that list, I probably would have ranked him 10th. But it is Michael Malone, the former head coach of the Denver Nuggets, won an NBA title in Denver. Not very much college basketball in his background. It's been 25 plus years since he was an assistant coach at Providence, I think it was. I'm not even remember. It's something like that. For the most part, this guy's been in the NBA for a long, long, long time. His connection to UNC appears to be that his daughter has enrolled at Carolina and is playing on the volleyball team, I believe it is. And because he loves his daughter very much, he apparently had been hanging out a lot on campus and knows some of the guys, knew some of the people connected to the program. It makes perfect sense. You have a former NBA title winning coach sort of hanging out on campus. Why wouldn't you occasionally engage with him? And when I'm not going to say these people all said no, but there were a number of names that were connected to Carolina that all ended up signing extensions or figuring out other things and stuff like that. And so suddenly the word is that Carolina, with the transfer portal opening in a matter of hours, Carolina may have panicked a little bit. That's not my word. Jeff Goodman used that word, said they panicked, and they were like, we got to get someone in place right away. And there was Michael Malone waiting for them. Scott, the word is they're paying him $50 million over the next 6 years. $50 million over 6 years. Supposedly that makes him the second highest paid coach in all of college basketball. It's a big old number. Give me your thoughts on Michael Malone running the Carolina program.
I mean, so that's the first I heard of the number, and Jesus, that's an interesting development. I mean, the obvious reaction is, hey, they're trying to do, Bill Belichick 2.0. How did that work in 1 year? I think obviously there's some nuance here. College basketball coaches have gone back and forth between the pro and college ranks a little bit more than has worked on the football side of things. The thing to me that is just the oddest.
Oh, dude, wait. There are very, very few examples of either a guy coming from the pros to college. I'm not talking about assistants who work there, I'm not talking about Evan Brad's kind of situations. But there are just not a lot of examples of it. And you can find Brad Stevens is a great one. You can find guys who moved back and forth, but there are an awful lot of John Calipari's who went to the pros and it didn't work. Rick Pitino went to the pros, didn't really work that great. I don't know how you classify Billy Donovan. He had some good years in Oklahoma City, hasn't been as good at the Bulls. But in terms of NBA guys coming to the college ranks, I'm trying to think. There are not many of them at all.
Larry Brown went back and forth a little bit, but like that's the only one that pops into my mind.
Larry Brown maybe top 5 coaches of all time.
Yeah.
I'm serious about that. Larry Brown, that guy can coach.
The weird thing about Mike Malone is he won an NBA title and was somehow still sitting around unemployed for a year or two. In the world of the NBA,
a year. He got fired. It's like the weirdest thing ever. They were the defending NBA champs. They were actually in line to, be like a 4 seed. I think it was a 4 or 5 seed last year. And he got fired like with 5 games left in the season or something like that. It was kind of crazy.
Let's just put it this way: is the number of the way the NBA coaching carousel works and the way they just sort of rotate through the same old guys in different positions. It's weird that he didn't get another job somewhere with a ring. That's if you're hiring someone, that's a pretty darn big red flag. Who knows what's going on behind the scenes? That's something for some intrepid, investigative journalist to work out. That maybe that will come to light now that he's in such a high marquee program. But that's a big freaking red flag to me. The other thing is that it doesn't seem to have helped the program much. Every single eligible Tar Heel player besides Luka Bogovac and Henry Visar has entered their name into the portal today. So as of now, UNC's program is Luka Bogovac and Henry Visar, who Brendan Marks had reported during the coaching search that the UNC program was fully expecting Henry Visar to go pro. So right now, the UNC program might just be Luka Bogovac and a guy who has never played in the transfer portal before trying to put together a roster. Let's see how that goes.
Yeah. I think, by the way, it's worth noting, I think one of the reasons they could pay this guy was there was no buyout. Like almost anybody else that they were looking at, there was going to be somewhere between $5 and $15 million buyout to get them. And Mike Malone had no buyout because he was unemployed. So Carolina saved some money there, and I guess they were able to funnel it toward paying him. Yeah, they're going to have to spend. They're going to have to spend big time. But hey, we just talked about Michigan spent and got themselves a title, so it can certainly be done. I don't know really fast. I don't know what to make of Mike Malone because on the one hand, NBA titles don't grow on trees, and dude has one. He's got a ring, and that's not easy to get, but he got a ring by coaching one of the greatest big men of all time. Like, how hard? Like, Nikola Jokic is a magician. Dude is just unlike almost anyone we've ever seen at that position, and just a truly, truly special player. And if you look at now, I'm not saying completely discount what Malone accomplished with Jokic on his roster, but if you look at the rest of Malone's career, when he doesn't have Nikola Jokic, it's not very impressive. Like his win percentage is pretty poor. So we'll see. I'm sure Carolina will give him some time. I'm sure they'll give him a lot of money to try and assemble a roster. We'll see how it works out. But I agree with you. I'm a little bit like, this guy has very, very little experience in college basketball. And he needs to get a staff. He needs a staff that has connections to like the AAU world and the, elite high school circuit and the such. They got to get things moving fast.
There's an argument to be made that coaching in the NBA is potentially the least impactful on winning, just based on how much NBA basketball is just dictated by how transcendent your superstar is.
Yeah.
That's epitomized by the fact that the Coach of the Year award is a one-way ticket to getting fired at some point in the next couple of years. It's inevitable. The reality is that coaching in college basketball is a different beast than coaching in the NBA. Dealing with 18 to 22-year-olds, even now that they're paid, even now that it's quasi-professional, motivating and dealing with 18 to 22-year-olds is a lot different than dealing with 22 to 30-year-olds who have been professional athletes for multiple years. It's a different skill set. It's a different style of coaching. That's why you don't see too many successful, transitions back and forth. It's and again, he does not have those relationships. He hasn't recruited a bunch of guys for 5, 10 years that he then goes and gets in the transfer portal because he has relationships with them right away. He doesn't have the scouting in place like Dusty May had, where he bought the right guys and he got the right transfers to come in to fit his system. He identified people who were languishing on the benches at other programs, not just the guys who were the automatic, give me $5 million in NIL and I'm going to come in and score 20 points a game. He doesn't have the infrastructure, and UNC doesn't seem to have the infrastructure in place for him, and they've got a really quick turnaround to get that in place if they want to field a competitive team for next season.
All right, with that, we're going to wrap it up here on the latest edition of the DBR podcast, Duke Basketball Roundup, DBR Bites. Scott, Rich, thank you so much for being with me. Donald and I will be back very soon. I anticipate we will hear more roster-related kind of moves, and we'll be here to tell you all about it. My understanding is that John Scheyer has this week been meeting with various players on the roster and discussing their roles and how they fit and what they need to work on, all that other kind of stuff. And I think as a result of that, you're going to start to hear some "I'm back" and unfortunately some "I'm moving on" kind of decisions over the course of the next several days. Until then, thanks for joining us. Here's the Duke Band playing us out and taking us home.